he said, I have something to say. And I said, I know. Josh has been in an accident. And he said, yes. And he's gone. And it was silent. And I said, what? Like, he's gone? And I remember doubling over because I could feel it in my gut. I felt it in my womb. It was like a pain I couldn't describe. And I just kept screaming at God and saying, no, you can't do this, because here's the thing. Just 10 days earlier, we had told the boys that we were getting a divorce.
Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to another episode of Soul Sisters Get Real. Hello, my soul sister, Caryn.
Hello. Good to see you today.
Good to see you. We were just discussing that this episode that we're going to be talking about today, it's a very important episode because it's about chapter 1 of your book. Your book is called The Unimaginable Gift of Losing a Child. And chapter 1 gets right into it, which is when the unimaginable happens. And so it's a topic that is going to be difficult to talk about. We're both mothers. And when the unimaginable happens, it's almost like we don't want to hear about it, talk about it, know about it because it's unimaginable. But at the same time, it does happen. And so your book is such a gift to the people out there who have gone through the unimaginable. And so if you know somebody who is experiencing the unimaginable, this is the episode that you need to share with them. And if you do know somebody, listen to it yourself because you could help them. Did you have anything that you wanted to add on before we get started about this chapter, Caryn? Just in terms of context.
Yeah, what's coming up for me is that since Josh has died, I have been in contact with many other moms and parents that have lost children, and even more so in the teenage young adult years, because it just seems obviously you get connected with those people. And I know, even me personally, everybody's story is different. We're all curious, like, how did they die and how did that happen? And yes, it may be difficult to hear. And it's also very, I feel as if not only people are curious, but it helps them understand what possibly happened. And so if you have lost a child, sometimes, it's good to know that someone else has been through it. And if you haven't, sometimes it's interesting to hear what someone experienced and how they moved through it.
Tell us about, so in the last episode, you talked about, the forward and how this book is about. So if you have, first of all, if you haven't heard as to how this book came about, please listen to the previous episode where Caryn explains the whole process of how Josh is actually co-creating this book with Caryn, which is beautiful, so beautiful. But first of all, let's talk about this chapter. So take us through that day and what actually happened in that day.
The name of the chapter is The Unimaginable Happened, I think it is. And so the beginning of the chapter starts with that sentence that it happened, and then the phone call. And I had just gotten home from work on a beautiful spring day, and I couldn't wait to go sit down on the pier because it had been winter and it was spring and it was finally warm. And I walked in the door and I was joking with our youngest son, who at the time was 17, and he was in high school. And I was joking with him about checking the chicks because he had gotten some new chickens at a local farm, and he and his middle brother would go and check them. And they talk about many times a day, we're going to go check the chicks. And it was like this big joke. So we were talking about checking the chicks, and I still was in my business clothes from my hypnosis office. And I walked in the door talking about checking the chicks, and the phone rang. And it was that phone call that no one ever wants to get. And it was my son Josh's boss, and he's the oldest. He was 23 at the time, and I knew he had ridden his motorcycle to work. And the phone on the other side, he said, "Caryn, Josh has been in a really bad accident." And immediately, your heart stops. And the question was, "How bad?" And he said, "Really bad." And I immediately thought, "Oh no, where can I get him? What hospital is he going to?" Because I had worked at a head injury clinic when I was in college because I had a degree in psychology. And I had worked with many adult males that had been in motorcycle accidents that were either paraplegics or they had brain damage from being in motorcycle accidents. And I had told him many, many times, wear a helmet because you don't want to be in that state. I know you so well. You're a busy boy. You've always got something going on. You're a risk taker. You don't want to have someone wiping your butt. I would like tease him about that. And he would always say, you're gonna have to figure out how to kill me if I'm in that state because I don't want to be in that state ever. And so I would always say, wear a helmet, wear a helmet. Well, he wasn't a helmet wearer. And in the end, that's not what he died from. So that's very interesting.
Mm.
I'll tell
I'll
you
just
that.
stop you. I'll just stop you there in case there are people listening from outside of the states.
Hmm.
For example, we're from. I'm from Australia, and that's it's such a surprise when I read that part in your book because in Australia you can't even ride a push bike without a helmet. It's illegal. So
Hmm.
you do not see any people on the road, whether it's a push bike or a motorbike, without a helmet. So it just blows me away that it's not a mandatory thing
Yeah.
to wear a helmet. Is that a state by state law or is that a uniform thing?
There are some states that require it. And here's the thing is I was against motorcycles my whole life. I never wanted my boys to drive a motorcycle. I know how dangerous they are and the rates of being killed on a motorcycle are very high. And so I was against the motorcycle, but he got a motorcycle. He was 23 years old. And what I've learned as a parent, if this helps anybody at all, is that we can, when they're adults, we can tell them our wishes, but when we hold it against them or we're angry at them for it or we nag them for it, it's not changing anything. Or let me tell you, if you worry about it. So if I would have worried every time he got on a motorcycle that he was going to die, my life would have been miserable or that he
Yeah.
was going to be in an accident, right? So what I learned is that I get, like I do now with everything, is I gave it to God and said, please wear a helmet. Mom wants you to wear a helmet. It's really not safe not to wear a helmet. And yet he would say that it was hot and he couldn't see well and he didn't like to wear a helmet. He liked the wind in his face. And for me to worry about it wasn't going to change whether he was going to do it or not. But what it might have done is damaged our relationship if I was a nagger, a worrier, or I was angry at him. So I would, tell him how I felt, and then he would go on his way. So
Yeah,
he
that's
didn't have a
that's a
helmet on.
that's a beautiful perspective, Karen, and I think important. That's why I'm interrupting you because
Yeah.
I don't want to lose that point that you chose not to worry about it. You chose not to nag him,
Hmm.
and therefore you had a beautiful relationship with him.
Yeah.
you know,
He did.
because if you nagged him and you worried and he felt that tension from you every time he spoke to you, then that the time you did have with him would have been
Hmm.
tarnished. But you
Right.
chose differently.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. So in the end, he died from many other causes anyway, because we did get the autopsy and it was a crushed chest and a crushed pelvis and a ruptured aortic valve and a head injury. But even if he would have had a helmet on, he wouldn't have survived. And that's not usually the case, right? Okay. So we get the phone call and his boss said it's a really bad accident. And I said, "How do you know?" And he said, "Well, his buddy Turner, who he worked with, he was a carpenter and they were building a house that day, was driving next to him in his car. He was on his motorcycle. Turner was in the car next to him, and he saw the entire thing, which broke my heart. And he said, I said, "What do I do? Where is he going? What do I do?" And he said, "Honestly, I don't know." He said, "I think you should call the sheriff's department of Waukesha County," which is the county he was in. So I called the sheriff's department. I said, "My son's been in a really bad accident. I'm just wondering where they might be taking him." And the dispatcher on the other side said, "I will have to call the sheriff and find out. Let me get back to you." So in the meantime, I could barely breathe. And I thought, okay, we're going to be going to the hospital. Who knows what this is going to look like? Because that's what you do when someone's in an accident. And I think it was just a few minutes later, Jaden was standing next to me, our youngest son, and I just told him what had happened. And in the meantime, my husband at the time, Kevin, had called me and he said, "I have something to say." And I said, "I know Josh has been in an accident." And he said, "Yes." And he's gone. And it was silent. And I said, "What? Like, he's gone?" He said, "Yeah, he's gone." And I said, "What do we do?" And he's like, "I don't know. They told us not to come to the scene." And that was it. That was it. And I I lost it. I lost it. I know now that it's super important that we feel our feelings. But I literally started screaming and hollering at God. And I paced up and down the hallways and I said, "You can't do this. You don't get to do this. Nope. Nope. You can't do this to me now. No, you can't do it. Take it back. Take it back, God." But I was screaming. And Jaden went and lied down on the couch because his mom's kind of going crazy. And I remember doubling over because I could feel it in my gut. I felt it in my womb. It was like a pain I couldn't describe. And I just kept screaming at God and saying, "No, no, you can't do this." Because here's the thing. Um, just 10 days earlier, we had told the boys that we were getting a divorce. And I thought, there's no way I can live through these two things. Because for me, getting to that place in a marriage, which, I mean, getting divorced was taboo and I was never going to get divorced. So getting to that place in a marriage was almost unbearable in itself. And then to know, and so Jane now will say, and here's the funny part is we've talked about it a few times since, and Jaden now will say, "Mom, you were crazy. You were going crazy." And I was like, "Yeah, I was." Like, I was so I didn't I was just I lost it. So in the meantime, I knew that Josh's girlfriend, who had been staying with him, he had bought a house, not even a year before that, about 20 minutes away from us. I knew she was at home waiting for him. And I thought, we have to tell her. But how do you tell? How do you tell her? Do you call her? Do you make that phone call to her so she hears it the same way I did? Do you show up? And they thought, I'm not in any shape to drive. Like, I was a wreck, and I didn't think Jaden was either. So in the meantime, then my husband came home because he was still living in our house. We were still, it had only been 10 days. We were still figuring things out. And I remember him walking in the door and I just collapsed in his arms. Like my knees just buckled in front of me and I just lost it. And he just held me. And then in the meantime, he said he had called our middle son to come home. So when our middle son walked in the door, I said, "I don't know what to do. We have to tell Brittany she's waiting for Josh in her home, in his home." And so my middle son said, "I can drive you. I'm okay." I said, "Are you sure you're okay?" He said, "Yeah, I can do this. I can drive you." So he drove us. He and I went over to Josh's house and walked in the house, and she was also in a ball, crying, just whimpering. And so I just picked her up and I held her and I grabbed her hand. I said, "We're gonna be okay. We're gonna get through this." And brought her home with me, and she stayed with me.
Because just to explain, because I did read the chapter, she did end up finding out via a phone call before you got there.
I
That's
did,
why.
yes. I did call her, yes, because I don't know. I guess I wasn't thinking clearly in many ways. So I did call her and I said, "I just want to let you know that we're on our way to pick you up, and Josh has been in a really bad accident." And I think I said, "And he died." And so when we got there, she had already known. Yep. Um, so yeah, the rest of that day was a whirlwind, and the chapter describes how this all happens. I remember then we had friends come over, and my sisters were far enough away. They weren't in the near area, so they didn't come till the next day. My parents were far away in Florida. They had to fly back, so they flew back the next day. But we had lots of friends come over, and I remember sitting in the sunroom, and no one had known that we had filed for divorce except we had told the boys. Maybe 7 days before this day. And I just remember looking at my friends and saying, "You guys don't understand. Like, I don't think I can live through this. I literally don't think I can live through this." And even in the book, I say many times, I had I had days where I didn't want to live through it. I really didn't. I was like, "You sucker, Josh. You took the easy way out. You're up there. You're in heaven, and here we are." and and I have, and right now I'm in a really great place, and I love life, and my soul's mission, and I know this because Josh and I now communicate, is to help others go through what was the most horrible day that you could ever imagine. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, and
Absolutely.
yeah, go ahead.
With with those initial days, Karen, like, were you able to sleep? Were you able to eat? Like, how did you do basic stuff like that?
Yeah. No, not really. The crazy thing is so I'll get to that in just a moment. Our friends started coming over, and then I remember thinking, like, okay, they told us not to come to the scene, but what happens to him? Like, what happens to his body, and where does he go? I had no idea, and there was no one to ask. And so it was more of that space of shock. And then as the friends started coming over, um, Kevin left to go to his office to get, I think he went to get Josh's computer, and the sheriff department. Three sheriffs pulled up into the driveway, and they asked for me, and we had some friends standing outside and some friends inside with me, and I walked over there, and they said, "We want to tell you that your son's been in a motorcycle accident and he died." And I just said, "I know." And they just hung their head and walked away. And like, who can write this stuff? I had no idea. And so I remember when Kevin then came back home, there was all these questions, and I didn't even think to ask the sheriff's office, but like, what are we supposed to do? Like, do we do anything? Like, I don't know what to do. And honestly, I can say in my head, I said many times, he's gonna walk through that door. He'll walk back through that door. This didn't happen. He's gonna be okay. He's gonna walk through the door. And so I think for days you're in that state of shock. And and so there's not, no. And so people bring over food, a lot of food, and they bring over coffee in the morning, and I didn't eat a thing. My parents showed up the next day, and my sisters came the next day, and super helpful. And they kept bringing me food and saying, "You have to eat," and you just can't eat. You can't. Your stomach doesn't let you.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah,
During that time, did you doubt whether a God existed? The reason I ask is that um, Christian was raised by his grandmother, and she lost um, two children. And one of them, the first one that she lost, um, she used to be very religious, and then became very, very angry with God
mhm.
and refused to go to church after that. So it's interesting that I know with your journey, you became even more aware, and your beliefs expanded. But in those initial days, did you
Mhm.
have any doubts about the existence of God?
I did not doubt God. Um, I wasn't even angry at God. I just couldn't understand, why it would happen. And so when it initially happened, I was screaming at him like, no way, like I refuse to allow, you can change this. I remember saying to God, you can change this, you can do anything, you can work miracles, fix it, just fix it, change it, do something. And so I wasn't angry, I didn't doubt God. But here's the crazy thing, and you'll read this in the book, because the whole book is about this, is the next day I remember sitting outside and I had the most amazing peace rush over my body. And it was so, I did not understand it at all, because I thought, how can I feel peaceful when my son just died? And the only thing I can say, it was divine. It was God giving me what I felt, almost as if He handed me a gift. He handed me the Holy Spirit and said, this is for you.
Mm.
And from that moment forward, my journey continued to open up, um, spiritually. And I don't know, but it was the next day. And again, I was then hearing Josh. He was coming to me in my dreams. But it was the next day that I had that divine peace. So I never got angry at God. I never doubted God. Um, I feel so blessed, because gosh, it's been hard. I am not going to say it was easy, and I am not going to say that I had massive, massive grief, but I was so blessed that I was able to see what I could see and feel what I could feel, and it could only be from God.
That's beautiful, Karen. The way you described that feeling the next day, it was almost like I was there with you, and it's just so beautiful to know that in our darkest moments, that that kind of grace is available to us if we allow ourselves to receive. So now that you've been through that hardest time, does it almost feel like, well, now there's nothing else to be afraid of? Like I've already faced the worst. Is that what it feels like for you now?
Ish. So I would say I am not afraid of death. I look forward to the day that I get to be reunited, I would say maybe in heaven, soul to soul with my son, although I do feel him now and I know he's with me and he gives me messages. And I hope someday maybe our souls can feel physically, because that's what I miss the most, is the physical, his physical body to hold and touch and feel and love and hug. Um, I am not afraid of death. I can honestly say, yeah. I mean, I know I can get through anything. And yet, yesterday when I was driving through a tornado and torrential downpours, I was nervous, and I questioned myself on that, because I've said many times now I'm not afraid of anything. And when I was driving, what I didn't want, I wasn't afraid. I didn't feel fear, because I know my emotions pretty well now. As hypnotherapists, we can identify emotions pretty well. It wasn't a fear I had. I felt stressed, but it was more a, ugh, I don't want to go off the road and be injured. Like that doesn't seem fun to me. I don't have time for that. I have too many things to do. God has plans for me. I want to get home. I don't want to be in the hospital. I don't want to deal with this. So I'm not afraid of, I don't live in fear of anything that might happen to me. But I have to be honest. I mean, there's some things that I don't want to endure. I mean, I don't really want to be sick, or any of that, but I know that it'll be fine. It's just a
Mhm.
body, and it's a matter of how we move through it.
Yeah, yeah. So how does the chapter close, Karen? What how does that close? Yeah.
So yes, so there's I go through what exactly happened, and it does close when I fell asleep. And it says, I'm not sure when I fell asleep, but I recall silently crying out, my pillows drenched with tears. Brittany by my side, because Brittany actually ended up sleeping in my bed with me for 2 weeks. She was in such emotional pain. Brittany by my side, whimpering as she slept. I prayed that maybe they got it wrong and he would appear on the doorstep in the morning. I wondered where they had taken my baby boy, and I didn't have the strength or will to ask. Why didn't you protect Josh, Lord? How am I supposed to walk in faith when my child is dead? I silently cried out. Little did I know that over the next few years, my faith would be strengthened, that I navigated the loss of my child and the breakdown of my marriage, that these threads of deep pain would spin to everlasting gold. And that's the end of the chapter.
Wow. Wow. You know, listening to all of that, Karen, even though it was so very, very, very difficult to hold what you went through on that night, you took us through the overwhelming peace that you also felt in the following days, the support that you had from your family and friends, and everybody doing the best they can, really. Like even those 3 officers that came and, you know, told you the news, even though you already knew the news, they have done something else, perhaps come in and said, is there anything else we can do for you? But they did the best they could do. And so everyone's just doing the best they can do in these very, very difficult, challenging times. And just even hearing that you slept in the same bed with your daughter-in-law, who, your son's girlfriend, is really beautiful. And it really shows the beautiful spirit that you are, that you shared your bed with her for weeks after that happened. And, not only did you have your own grief to deal with, but you had hers as well. And that is testament to the lady that you are and the beautiful, kind-hearted soul that you are. And really, this book is a gift. So we're definitely going to put the links down below as soon as it gets published. And yes, thank you so much for bringing
Mhm.
this to the world.
Yes. And I do have a website now with a landing page that if anyone is interested in getting my journey and when the book gets published, you can sign up for it via email. So it's my website, which is my name, carynbird.com / and then the name of the book, The Unimaginable Gift of Losing a Child. So you should be able to find it that way. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, my beautiful soul sister.
Yes. Thank you for all of your beautiful, loving questions. And I can't wait to talk more about it.
Awesome. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for watching. We hope you loved it.
And if you did, please like this video and subscribe to the channel.
And remember, always connect to your truest essence.
And choose love. We'll see you next time.